Hello and welcome to the 5 Yard Dynasty podcast. Liam, playoffs are here. How's things? How's your season shaping up? How's all things Dynasty fantasy gone?
I'll be honest, it's a surprise. I didn't think I did as well in my leagues week to week as I have done when I've come to the playoffs. I'm in the playoffs in all but 2 of my Dynasty leagues, and I've got about 7, I think, excluding the Dynasty Listener League because I don't want to talk about that yet. And then, fantasy, as in redraft leagues, done pretty well in those. I'm in playoffs in all but a couple. My home league that I've not missed playoffs in, won twice. Unfortunately, just missed out on playoffs this week, and it made me sad. James Conner going off for 33 points just put the nail in the coffin.
Lovely. Well, yeah, it's for me. I think I did a post on Twitter, so I made the playoffs in 58% of my leagues, which I was pretty pleased with. I'm the number 1 seed in my home league, which is, let's be honest, all that matters. But I did get knocked out of Scottish Fishbowl in the first round of the playoffs, which I'm pleased to have made the playoffs. That was my aim. So not too bad, but could have been better. But before we dive in, keen to remind you that yes, Liam, No Cuts on Your Nuts is back. The 5 Yard Dynasty podcast is brought to you by Manscaped, who are still the best in men's below the waist grooming. We've got that exclusive offer of 20% off and free worldwide shipping if you use the code 5 Yard. Liam, the reason people tune in, I'm sure, cocktail of the week. What have you got to brighten up my Tuesday evening?
This one's actually going to brighten up your Tuesday afternoon or evening because it's another limoncello cocktail, Rich. I know that you're a big fan. So lemon sunrise, this one is if you're watching on YouTube. It is limoncello, orange juice, and grenadine. That is all you need, Rich. So 3 parts orange juice, 1 part limoncello, and then just top it off with a little bit of grenadine. Yes, I stirred the grenadine in just for you.
There you go. That's good to hear. So what you're saying, so you've basically just poured yourself a glass of orange juice and added some limoncello to it?
Yeah,
and you're calling that a cocktail?
Hey, you call a lot of things a cocktail, mate.
I could do a lot of cocktail makers out of a job with simplicity like that. But yeah, I mean, let's dive into the week. It was an interesting week for fantasy, but I think the last 24 hours have slightly gone crazier, shall we say? But Liam, who were the highest scorers of the week?
Yeah, so as usual, high scorers, we use 4-point touchdowns for quarterbacks and PPR for all of the positions. That is no tight end premium. Starting off at the quarterback position, we had Josh Allen, Tom Brady, and Aaron Rodgers. I was lucky enough to have Tom Brady and Aaron Rodgers on one of my contending rosters that was in the first week of its playoffs this week. So that ended pretty well, I'll say that. So running backs, we had Dalvin Cook, who we faced in the Dynasty Listener League, Rich. 35 points on Thursday night was not a good day for us.
It was a bad start to the week, wasn't it?
Yeah, and then as I said, James Conner, I faced him in my home redraft league, who knocked me out of playoff contention. If I'd won that matchup, I would have been in. And then Rashad Penny, Rich, considering that Rashad Penny was a first-round pick, hasn't done anything for years. I know that a lot of people, including myself, had high hopes for him coming into the league, and he's done nothing. Had 26 points this week? Crazy.
Yeah. I think, look, I'll throw myself in the Rashad Penny truthers camp. I think I've still got 6 shares. I've held on to them since pretty much his rookie draft. But the talent's always been there. There's never been any doubt that he is a very talented back and that he was capable of doing this. The problem's been that he's never stayed healthy. And, he's not done that this year. We saw that he was injured yet again. So let's just hope that, he can put together a couple of healthy games, show the Seahawks what they drafted to be, and then they're going to pay him a load of money, and then he'll probably get injured again. So yeah, if I'll be honest, just based on perhaps Rashad Penny's track record, maybe it might be an opportunity to sell high because he might not be healthy ever again.
But I suppose the other variable in the Penny world was Carson being a much better and more available back when he played.
But now Chris Carson's potentially
exactly that's where I was going with that, Rich. I could see you ready to jump in, so I left that to you. But yeah, now Chris Carson's potentially not even going to finish his career, or his full career, his full potential. Penny could be seeing a lot of work there. I mean, Adrian Peterson doesn't look like he's going to be the answer, so fingers crossed Rashad Penny actually shows something. This was the year that I was all in on Rashad Penny coming back, and then he got injured, and I ended up dropping him in basically all of my leagues for other players, and now look what happens. Don't worry, guys. I'll let you know who I'm going to drop next, so you can pick them up in all of your leagues. Over at the wide receiver position, we had Devontae Adams, Cooper Kupp, and Hunter Renfrow, someone that me and Louis spoke about a few weeks ago. Hunter Renfrow, PPR machine during that game. You had, at the tight end position, George Kittle with another monster week. Mark Andrews, and then Dawson Knox, Rich. Dawson Knox absolutely having himself, I wouldn't say a breakout season, but he definitely has come out of nowhere.
Yeah, well, I mean, credit to you, Lim. I won't say he came out of nowhere. I believe in our pre-season podcast, I believe you were the one who was hyping him up as a potential breakout at tight end. So
I did say him once or twice. However, I won't take credit because I will admit that it was more of a tongue-in-cheek comment. As if anyone's going to break out, I would have put my money on him, but I wouldn't have wanted to put any money on anyone because it's the tight end position. So
I think, look, he's the tight end 5 currently in PPR. He's the tight end 6 if you look at points per game. But I think for me, the most impressive thing is that he's played 11 games, and 7 of those 11 games he's been a top 12 tight end. So, you know, he's been fairly consistent. He's had 4 top 5 weeks in there. So, you know, whilst, yes, the Bills' offense hasn't quite been what we'd hoped, and I know Stephon Diggs isn't producing what people will have paid for him at the beginning of the season, but Dawson Knox proved himself to be a very solid, reliable tight end. I wouldn't put him in that kind of elite tier. I think he's far from it. But I do think that, you know, he's a plug and play, set it and forget it tight end at the moment. And yeah, comfortable feeling happy with him if he's your only answer at tight end at the moment.
Yeah, I've got a league where he's the only answer at tight end, and I somehow have got that team to the 5th seed in the playoffs this week. I needed to win and then someone else to lose to get into the playoffs, and I managed to jump up an extra spot as well. It was a weird one because I sold Jonathan Taylor in that league for Michael Pittman and first and something else. So that one I was expecting to rebuild in, and now I'm the 5th seed in the playoffs, so anything can happen, eh?
Absolutely.
I'll stop humble bragging now. So significant news. We have it was looking like a bit of a down week on news. We didn't really have much to talk about. And then we had a lot of news in the past 24 hours. So let's start off with what's happened over the week, over the games, shall we say. Lamar Jackson had a right ankle sprain. It's not a high ankle sprain, which is good news. He's possibly back this week. You've also got Kareem Hunt with a high ankle sprain. He's probably done for the fantasy season now. He's probably out for 3 to 4 weeks. And I wouldn't trust in the first week back, especially if he comes back before those 3 weeks. So, yeah, he's probably done if you've got him on any contending rosters. You got DJ Moore with a hamstring strain. He's day-to-day, but he could be out 2 to 4 weeks. That one's a big injury, Rich.
Yeah, I think Matt Rule's come out and said he's day-to-day. But to me, if it's a hamstring strain, you know, that's not something you want to be messing with a wide receiver. I'm expecting him to at least miss some time. I think, you know, what have the Panthers got to rush him back? There's no need. I do wonder if we're going to see him sit for at least a couple of weeks.
I was about to say that. So Josh Allen with turf toe as well. So he is expected to play, but that could limit his rushing upside, Rich.
Yeah, absolutely. It's 50% of the reason we love Josh Allen is that rushing production. He had a 100-yard game on Sunday, and turf toe. Most players, it misses time. I guess with the quarterback, you can, wrap it up and just soldier on as such. But I'm fully expecting that's going to limit his rushing upside.
Well, if you look at Aaron Rodgers, he broke his pinky toe. I mean, it's not the end of the world, but it's still a big injury, and he still played.
Turned into Big Ben with the amount he's moaning about it, though, isn't he?
Definitely, I'll agree with you on that one. So Terry McLaurin had a concussion; he left the game. He's likely out this week, but with concussion protocol, we do see people come back. I mean, Mike Glennon, even though he's a quarterback, did come back from concussion within 1 week. But I'd expect the Washington football team to err on the side of caution with McLaurin as a wide receiver and probably more prone to those hits anyway. You've got Austin Eckler with a left ankle sprain. He's expected to play on Thursday, but then I've also seen reports that he could be out for 2 weeks. And the team are staying obviously really quiet because they don't want to give anything away, especially with a short week. So this one could go either way, and I've got Eckler in a lot of contending teams.
Yeah, I think when the news broke, I sort of thought that he was going to be out. He left the game, he didn't return. I thought that was it. He was going to be out for a couple of weeks. But then Brandon Staley's come out and said he's fine, he's going to play. He could have returned to the game, they just didn't need him to as such. So it's made me a little bit more confident. I'm still very nervous. I wrote up Justin Jackson in the waiver wire article today. I think he's probably next man up. But I also think potentially Josh Kelly could be worth monitoring. If I'm in my playoffs, I'm not feeling comfortable starting either, if I'm being honest. So let's just hope Austin Eckler is good to go in what should be a really good matchup against the Chiefs on Thursday.
So Tony Pollard also had an injury. Now, this is the technical term, so forgive me if I'm wrong, but it's plantar fascia? Fascia. There you go, Rich. I did have a look, and it is the ligament on the bottom of your foot, so on the sole of your foot.
As someone that's torn their plantar fascia, it's very painful.
So you're probably looking at Corey Clement, and the only reason I put this on here is if Zeke goes down, which he looks to be battling injuries at the moment. If Zeke does go down, Corey Clement's probably the back to own in Dallas. Then, Rich, there's been a whole lot of news over the past 24 hours, probably over the past few hours before recording on Tuesday night. So do you want to give us a breakdown of this?
Yeah, you have to excuse me because it's sort of all coming through thick and fast, and it's been the last hour probably. But so first of all, news broke that the Browns have got 8 positive cases of COVID within the team. Now, one of them was Jarvis Landry. They also had a couple of their key offensive linemen, I believe Wyatt Teller and Jedrick Wills were both there. So could be a huge impact in terms of that, arguably the best offensive line in the league, missing 2 key pieces. Then after that, news broke that the Rams have shut their practice facility and sent everybody home for today. It's since broken after that Odell Beckham has tested positive for COVID. And then almost just to top it off, Christian McCaffrey has also tested positive in the last few minutes, which normally wouldn't be that newsworthy given the fact that he's currently sat on IR and done for the year. But interestingly, he was on the sideline on Sunday. And you do wonder if there could potentially be more positive cases to come. Normally, most players who are on IR don't travel with the team, don't come to home games. Obviously, Christian McCaffrey is a little bit higher profile than the average person. But yeah, the fact he was around the team and has tested positive does make me wonder. It could be a very stressful few days for those setting lineups in the first week of the playoffs.
The other one that you didn't mention, Rich, was Austin Hooper. Now, he's not been massively fantasy relevant probably for those 2 tight end leagues. He's also gone to the COVID IR. And then the final bit of significant news, and I'm sure everyone's glad to hear this, bye weeks are done, guys. You don't have to worry about bye weeks anymore. You've just got to worry about all these COVID cases coming in. So, yeah. Rich, take us through the Dynasty stock market. Who's your first riser this week?
So I thought there was some obvious names that had fantastic weeks, and I think we're going to get to a couple of them a bit later on. But one big riser that I wanted to get to certainly burned a lot of people early on in the season. It was Robbie Anderson. It seems basically perhaps his issue was with Sam Darnold and nothing else. And we talked about DJ Moore getting injured on Sunday, but Robbie Anderson commanded 12 targets, caught 7 of them for 84 yards and a touchdown. So he's shown great rapport with Cam Newton. He obviously caught the touchdown from PJ Walker. To me, he looked like the receiver he'd always been on Sunday. I just do wonder if perhaps he just doesn't like Sam Darnold, and maybe we could see Robbie Anderson go back to being the player we all hoped he'd be down the stretch.
I find it crazy, the Robbie Anderson season so far. So he's had a pretty easy schedule looking on Sleeper. You can see a lot of green with his opponents, which is always good news for a wide receiver. He's also on pace for over 100 targets this season in a 17-game season, which, yeah, that's crazy. But he's not done anything with those targets so far. And as you said, it might be Sam Darnold rather than Cam Newton, but he's definitely burned me in one league that I was hoping to contend this year, and very quickly found out that I was not going to contend with Calvin Ridley disappearing, Robbie Anderson being my wide receiver 2, Golladay not doing anything. But yeah, Robbie Anderson, I think he had a great week, but I'm still really, really cautious, especially with the swapping that could be happening with Cam and PJ Walker. I know that Matt Rule came out and said that he's happy to keep swapping them during games, which I'm not too keen about, especially when you're trying to have a proper wide receiver 1 there.
So the report I read was that they think Cam Newton doesn't have a good enough grasp on the 2-minute offense, which is why they put PJ Walker in. But I mean, it basically feels like every time PJ Walker comes into the game, he throws a pick. So I don't see how Cam Newton could be any worse than that, to be quite frank. So, yes, slightly strange decisions. But then this is a team that has, in the space of, 18 months, moved on from Cam Newton, moved on for Teddy Bridgewater, moved on from Sam Darnold, moved on for PJ Walker, brought back Cam Newton, and then moved on from him again. So, I'm not sure they're the best franchise to be viewing quarterback decisions on.
I'm interested in what Terrace Marshall does with this little bit of opportunity. I know he's been injured for a lot of this season, and he's not done anything when he wasn't injured. But now there's no DJ Moore, Robbie Anderson could be just getting force-fed targets. Maybe we see a little bit from Terrace Marshall. I think that's more hope at this point, though.
Yeah, I'm not a big Terrace Marshall fan. I wasn't a fan coming into the season. I think that's, was quite pleasing from a personal takes perspective that I seem to have got Terrace Marshall right so far. My thoughts on rookies that don't produce, I'm pretty much out on. Maybe this is his last chance as far as I'm concerned. If he doesn't do anything in these next few weeks, if DJ Moore's going to be missing time, then I don't have any shares as it is, but I'm certainly not going to be picking any up. The next guy I wanted to talk about as a riser, Liam. Now, this is slightly strange one, because normally you'd look at this stat line. So it's 10 rushes for 37 yards and 2 touchdowns, and 3 targets, 3 receptions for 5 yards. It's not exactly a stat line to write home about if you remove the touchdowns, and that's Clyde Edwards-Helaire. But for me, what I was hugely kind of taking as promising out of this was the fact that he saw 2 rushing attempts inside the 10. And that's been the first time he's seen more than 1 rushing attempt inside the 10 since his debut game last year. I appreciate, 2's not that much different to 1, but hopefully, if he's going to start seeing some decent passage usage, if he's going to see 3+ targets in a game, if he's going to start seeing some goal line work, maybe CH can start paying back some of the cost that people had to spend to acquire him.
I think you need to put the brakes on a little bit, call the jets a little bit. 2 rushing attempts rather than 1 does not make me feel excited whatsoever. They've still got a really good back in Terrell Williams. With Clyde Edwards-Helaire, he averaged 3.7 yards per carry. That's not brilliant. It's not bad, but it's not brilliant.
Yards per carry is an offensive line stat, not a running back stat.
I'd say it's both, but
no.
We're not going to agree on this, Rich. We're not going to agree, but I'd still use it a little bit. It's got to be something that you think about. I still don't think that he's risen too much, especially just because you've got the extra rushing attempt and you actually put it into the end zone this time.
It was more that I thought it was noteworthy. Clyde Edwards-Helaire finished as a top 10 back this week, and I think that that is noteworthy if he's going to start getting that usage. And look, your value is always going to go up when you have a top 10 week.
Yes, definitely. My biggest concern is the passing usage.
Yeah, agreed.
He's not getting that at the moment, and especially in PPR leagues, which we tend to talk about. That's kind of not exactly the only thing you look at, but it is a big part of a running back's usage. So if he starts getting that, then perfect. But
I do think
I'm
holding
off a little bit.
It's going to be interesting to view, because without wanting to get perhaps in too deep, the issue the Chiefs have had all year is facing these cover too high defenses that are basically saying to them, put 10, 12 plays together and score. And the Chiefs haven't been willing to do that. And you've seen the two blowout games they've had have both been against the Raiders. And the Raiders have basically said, no, we're not going to follow this blueprint everybody's put out. We're going to try and run one high and run our traditional defense, and they're getting torn apart. So I do wonder if the Chiefs are going to succeed down the stretch, if the Chiefs are going to succeed in the playoffs, they're going to have to basically take what the defense is giving them a bit more. And to me, that is, they're going to have to check the ball down and get the ball in, those short to intermediate areas of the field. And I think if that's the case, Clyde Edwards-Helaire receiving usage is only going to go up. Maybe I'm being hopeful, maybe not, but we'll leave that for another day.
The one thing I do want to jump in there with is both Terrell Williams and Jerich McKinnon, who have been the two backs to own outside of CEH, have both done contract-wise this year. So unless either of them are signed, you're potentially looking at CEH getting the bulk work there.
They'll probably bring somebody in, won't they? But yeah.
I don't think it'll be anyone massive, though.
No. And then the Fallers. So I guess I'm not sure if this is perhaps a negative on the player or more the situation, but it's James Robinson. Obviously, the Jacksonville Jaguars are a complete tire fire at the moment. Who the hell knows what's going on there? The peripherals are there. So he had a 63% snap share. He had a 50% opportunity share, but he had 6 rushing attempts for 4 yards. He absolutely killed me in a couple of leagues, including the Scott Fish Bowl. I will be holding that against him for forever that he got the spot. But I think the interesting stat here is that he averaged minus 0.3 yards before contact on those 6 rushing attempts. He, every single yard that he picked up, he earned on Sunday. It's, as I said, that offense is just putrid, and he didn't exactly get the ball in good spots. Do you think that we've seen the end of James Robinson? Obviously, Travis Etienne is back potentially next year. Do you think that James Robinson goes back to a potentially high-end handcuff, a sort of RB3, RB4, and never going to feel comfortable starting him again?
I do. I think that he's going to go to, or he already is a volume-based back, and I don't think you will ever see him anything above that. It's tough because I think that he's a good player when he gets the touches. I just think he's in an awful situation. And Trevor Lawrence came out and said that we need to get James Robinson on the pitch. And credit to Jacksonville, they got him on the pitch. They just didn't use him at all. I think it's just a bit of an awful situation. They scored no points, so they're always behind. They needed to throw the ball, and it just wasn't a good game for them whatsoever, especially when Laquan Treadwell is one of your top wide receivers.
Yeah, and then the other big faller, this one absolutely killed me. I went out on a bit of a straw and stuck him up. He was my RB3 in terms of rankings this week, and that was Antonio Gibson. I was above consensus, and yet he finished as the RB43. I was really excited that with JD McKissick out, we were finally going to see the Antonio Gibson that we saw week 1. And he was going to get some passing usage, but he only saw 2 targets. It's just brutal. I don't get, the guy has got everything you'd want in terms of that receiving potential, but they just seem unwilling to give him the ball in the passing game. What do you think that there's any hope for him ever getting that receiving work?
I think a lot of this comes down to the type of game that this was. If you remember, Rich, and if any of the listeners actually watched the game or have gone back and watched or read the plays, Washington went down by a lot real early. They had a defensive score, or Dallas had a defensive score, as well as going up 7-0 early on as well. So the game script was always a pass first game script. But then you also had Taylor Heineke go out partway through this game, which meant Kyle Allen threw 9 passes, which screws up any type of game plan that they had, at least for those 9 passes. And then looking at the stats, they didn't throw the ball to the running back that much. So they passed the ball for 34 attempts, and they only threw to the running backs 5 times, 2 of which went to Gibson and 1 to each of the other running backs there. So I just don't think that they're using the running back position as a pass catching position. The other thing to note is McLaurin came out of this game, and that would have screwed up any of the passing work. But at least in my mind, I would have expected that passing work to kind of shift to your next best option,
Exactly.
who is on the field, which is Gibson.
I just can't get it. Terry McLaurin's out. Logan Thomas is out. Curtis Samuel's still not fully healthy. JD McKissick was out, and yet you're still not throwing the ball to Antonio Gibson. I don't get what needs to happen for him to be used in the receiving game. It's just completely mental for me. But Liam, moving on to the player of the week. Who's your player of the week this week?
So, Rich, this one might be a bit controversial, but I've decided to go with Justin Fields. Obviously, I watched the game very closely. Stayed up on Monday morning for Sunday night for you guys in America to watch this game. And although Fields threw 2 interceptions, he still looked really good. And it scared me every time he got outside of the pocket, because although our defense is playing really well at the moment, or at least for this season, I don't think we can deal with any type of rushing quarterback. The stat line isn't anything to jump off the charts about passing wise. So he threw 33 passes, completed 18 of them. It's about 56% completion rate. He only had 224 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. That's nothing to write home about. But he did have that rushing upside that everyone knew that Fields has. He ran a 4.44, which is incredibly fast for a running back, for a quarterback. You'd probably expect that more from a wide receiver, but he still ran a 4.44. In this game, he had 9 rushing attempts for 74 yards. That's 7.4 points that Fields had on the ground alone. He did lose 1 fumble. That is, his turnovers are a bit of an issue, but I would say that is a lot on the pressure that the Packers were putting on. I don't know how you feel about this, Rich, because a touchdown completely swings this for him. If he scores a touchdown, he's probably top 4, I think, this week, top 4, top 5 quarterback this week. But he still scored 20 points. He was good, and he has that rushing floor and rushing upside with a touchdown. I think he's going to be, and although I hate this phrase, I think he is going to be the league winner this year. especially in the playoffs, if you've got him. The next three matchups he's got on schedule: Minnesota Vikings, who haven't been brilliant; the Seattle Seahawks, who have lost Jamal Adams, again, not a brilliant defense. And then in week 17 in your championship weeks, he's got New York Giants. Not great at all. So what do you think about this, Rich? Because I think he had a value dip when he wasn't playing, and he wasn't playing very well. I think this is slowly bringing him back up to where he was, if not just a bit over where he was when he was drafted.
Yeah, I don't know if he's quite reached that point. I think he's still probably slightly undervalued. I think people are probably a little bit slow to jump back in. I love Justin Fields. He was my QB2 coming out, and I think that the reason you love him is the rushing potential, and that's what we've seen the last few weeks, isn't it? Is that him actually being involved in the rushing game, and as you said, 74 yards. It's, that's that extra touchdown and a half that you're putting on top of the kind of passing game. I do think his passing stats are slightly buoyed by I don't even know if you can call it a pass, the handoff to Jakeem Grant for the touchdown. That's a 60-yard touchdown.
Yes, it was.
If that's a turnaround and handoff to Jakeem Grant, that's what we're talking, 6 points less that he scores just there. So yeah, I really like Justin Fields. I think he's he's QB 14 for me at the moment. I think he's a solid QB2 for Dynasty. I think calling him a league winner down the stretch, maybe in Superflex leagues. I think if you're in a 1 QB league and you're starting Justin Fields in your playoffs, you're definitely braver than I, because that's not a move I'd be doing. But I get what you're saying in terms of Superflex leagues. I think he's got the potential to be a really good kind of back end QB1 in most of those weeks with those matchups. Yeah,
I'm glad you brought that up, because I did mean to flex leagues. If you're in 1 QB leagues, I wouldn't be starting him over any QB1 this year. So Fields, I think, will become a high end QB to low end QB1 by the end of the year.
Yeah, and it's nice to see him paying back what people drafted him to be, quite frankly. My player of the week, Liam. So I'm going to go with Tyler Lockett. Forever undervalued, forever misunderstood. I think people, look at Tyler Lockett and they're just like, oh, he puts up all his stats in 3 or 4 weeks. But to me, I always liked Tyler Lockett because the guy can win you a week on his own. And he certainly did it for me in my home league last week. So he had 9 targets, caught 5 touchdowns, 5 balls, sorry, not 5 touchdowns, for 140 yards.
Crazy week.
Look, over the last few weeks, he's straight up outperforming DK Metcalf. I don't know what's going on in Seattle that they can't seem to manufacture touches for DK Metcalf. The guy is a freak and they're not getting the ball. But look, Tyler Lockett can just get open. You think if you were a defensive coordinator going up against Seattle, you'd say, right, we're gonna load the box. They want to run the ball. We're going to stop the ball. We're going to try and stop those play action deep shots and Russell scramble around deep shots. And yet Tyler Lockett gets open every single week. It is ridiculous.
See, I think with Tyler Lockett, I, coming into the season, thought the same way that you did, as, oh yeah, you're or as you said, sorry, he only puts up his points in like 3 or 4 weeks. But I've owned him in 1 league this year, and he's opened my eyes to what he is, because he doesn't underperform per se. Yes, he'll only get you 5 to 10 points on a I'd say more of an average week, but then, as you said, he can win you a week by going up to 30-ish points any given Sunday. And if you've got that in a flex spot, then that is absolutely amazing.
Yeah. So he's finished as a top 24 receiver 6 times this year. So half his games he's been a wide receiver 2.
He's a cheaper Terry McLaurin.
Yeah, in 3 of those games, he's been a top 5 wide receiver. An interesting stat. So Tyler Lockett, in terms of how PFF view kind of deep passes, they view deep targets as anything over 20 yards. He leads the league in deep targets with 35. That's where you make your money. He's caught 17 of them, so he's catching half of those deep balls. That's so exciting. I think for me, he is perennially undervalued, perennially misunderstood. I am very concerned because I do think that Russell Wilson is gone at the end of the season out of Seattle. But I think in terms of perhaps a cheap little, piece you can go out and buy to help you in the playoffs, I do think if Tyler Lockett could well be that guy. I think you can probably get him. I
value him late first. That's a smash for me.
Yeah, so I currently value him as a mid to late first. I think you don't have to pay that. I think you can probably get him for 2 seconds in most leagues. So,
if you're pushing in the playoffs and you need that extra flex upside play, 2 seconds for Tyler Lockett. I'd pay the late first that you're probably going to get if you're in the playoffs, but 2 seconds is probably the more, as you said, the more not reasonable offer, but the more likely offer that you're going to get accepted.
And I think if he balls out in a week in the playoffs in your flex spot and puts up a 30-point game, then that's basically won you the week. Because if you're getting 30 points from your flex spot, you're delighted. Yes, he might have a duff game, but he's still going to get 10 points. He's not going to completely disappear. So for me, I think he's a really sneaky, under the radar option as we head into the playoffs. So the deep dive player of the week, perhaps not such a deep dive now with the Jarvis Landry news, but it's Donovan Peoples-Jones. So since Odell Beckham's left, obviously we've seen Donovan Peoples-Jones flash. He's had 3 weeks out of the last 5 where he's put double-digit points. On Sunday, he saw 7 targets, caught 5 of them for 90 yards. I think the thing for me is that his ADOT is impressive. So he's had average depth of target as over 16 yards for the season. I think it's an interesting one perhaps to monitor going into next season, and perhaps this week's going to show what he is, because Jarvis Landry is likely to be out of Cleveland at the end of the year. His contract has got no more guaranteed money. I can't believe, I don't know the numbers off the top of my head, but I think it's like 15 million. I can't believe the Browns are going to end up paying him that. So could Donovan Peoples-Jones step in as, the target leader, the wide receiver one in that offense? Quite possibly. I think we're going to see it this week with no Jarvis Landry. Perhaps he's one to monitor. It could be a sneaky little buy now ahead of the off season when his price could go up as soon as Jarvis Landry's cut.
Yeah, so I think with Jarvis Landry, the issue you're going to have with him next year is if they cut him, who else do they have in that wide receiver room? You've got Donovan Peoples-Jones, Rashard Higgins is out, and Anthony Schwartz. Your top 3 options this year if Landry's out. And as I said, Higgins isn't even there next year. Maybe they bring someone in the draft or in free agency, because as we've been saying all season, the wide receiver free agency is looking pretty good talent-wise. I'm just looking at the cap, and we had some news drop earlier today. I don't know whether you saw it, Rich, but the max cap is looking to be around 208 million next year, with potential of that going even higher. The Cleveland Browns cap space next year, they're adjusted 219 mil, so they do need to make some savings. I just wonder whether it is actually going to be Landry that makes those savings for them.
So just looking at Landry's contract now, so he's owed 16.5 million is his cap hit next year. Okay, he's got a dead cap hit of 1.5 million, so they can save 15 million by moving on from Jarvis Landry. Okay, now I'm fairly confident that you can move on from Jarvis Landry, save yourself 15 million, and go and find a better, more competent receiver in free agency for 15 million.
Who do you think they're going to sign, though, Rich? I can see where you're coming from. Maybe you pick up Juju Smith-Schuster coming off injury.
Yeah,
for
I'd love that.
about 7-8 mil. I can imagine something like that happening. Definitely.
I think you'd have to pay Juju a bit more than 7 or 8 mil, but yeah,
I'd be surprised after his injury this year.
I think
what he
he'll
showed
be
before the injury.
I think he'll be in the 12 to 15 million range would be my guess. I'd rather, I'll be honest, this might be an unpopular opinion. If I was the Browns, I'd rather release Jarvis Landry, save 15 million, and go and pay Jameson Crowder 5 million to come and do the same job, because I don't see Jarvis Landry as any better than Jameson Crowder right now.
I'm not saying that you're wrong. I'm just saying I don't think they're going to do it. I can see them getting rid of Landry, but I think that they've got to bring in a similar name to come in. I don't think they're going to bring Crowder in to be their wide receiver 1.
Maybe so. Just thinking a few options. We could go and spend some money at Michael Gallup. You could go big fish hunting. Could you go and get Chris Godwin? There's
probably not with their cap, but
I think
I see your point.
Great. I just think that I can easily see Donovan Peoples-Jones. I think at worst he's going to be the wide receiver 2 in this offense. I think that they're bringing an option in. I think Jarvis Landry's gone. I don't think they're going to roll forward with Donovan Peoples-Jones as the wide receiver 1, but I think that he's shown over the past few weeks that if he's going to get a 15 to 20% target share, then I think he could absolutely be relevant and be useful from a fantasy perspective.
So, Rich, who have you got as your spotlight player of the week this week?
So you highlighted him earlier. I felt it was time that we had a chat about Hunter Renfrow. The guy's incredible. Just was it third and Renfrow? They used to call it. He is a PPR machine. So on Sunday, he saw 14 targets. He had 13 receptions for 117 yards and a touchdown. He was the wide receiver 3 on the week. This is a guy, I hold my hands up here. I was offered Hunter Renfrow at the beginning of the season for a 3rd round pick. And you know that I don't value 3rd or 4th round picks. And I said, jog on, Hunter Renfrow is never going to be anything more than a back end wide receiver 4 or 5. I'm never going to start him. Man, I wish I had that 3rd round pick back right now. So Hunter Renfrow, he's the wide receiver 12 on the season. The guy's just been incredibly consistent. He just, commands targets. He's been Derek Carr's best mate. He's had 9 top 36 weeks. There's enough to be said. I think perhaps the hype's getting there a little bit now, but I still think he's probably undervalued. I've bumped him up in my survival kit. I put him in the same tier now as Darnell Mooney, Adam Thielen, Kadarius Toney. So I'd value him as a high 2nd, late 1st. That's how highly I think that. I see no reason why he's not going to be a wide receiver 1 for fantasy, but I think that he could easily be probably a wide receiver 3 moving forward for the next couple of years.
I think I was in the same boat, but I was expecting Henry Ruggs, who what happened, it was completely unforeseen by anyone. I was expecting him to take up a lot of the deep ball targets. Then I was expecting Bryan Edwards to do a lot more than what he's done, basically anything this season. And then Waller's also been on a down season this year. So I think everything has broken Hunter Renfrow's way, and in the opposite way that both of us thought was going to happen in the season. And yes, we probably took too long speaking about Hunter Renfrow up until a couple of weeks ago. So like 12 weeks during the season, 11, 12 weeks. But I think with Renfrow, he is a top 36 receiver at the moment. I just wonder what they're going to do next season, because you're going to have a new coach come in. I doubt that they're going to have a new GM, but they're definitely going to have a new coach. Do they bring in another wide receiver? And what does that wide receiver look like? Is it a Henry Ruggs replacement, or is it a Hunter Renfrow short down yardage replacement? I
think a lot on Hunter Renfrow depends on what they do with Derek Carr. I think if Derek Carr's around, I think Hunter Renfrow is still a very solid fantasy option. I think if Derek Carr's gone, I mean, Derek Carr's contracts, his cap hit is 19.8 million next year. So look, Derek Carr's a top 12 NFL quarterback, not fantasy. I'd be shocked if they're either going to trade him for a haul or they're going to keep him around. And I think all the time he's there, I think Hunter Renfrow could be really useful and a decent little starter for you.
I do think that he's a great pickup if you picked him up during the season. I don't think I'd pay anything after last week or after the week just gone, because I think you're probably having to pay a second, and I don't know whether I'd pay a second for him.
See,
going forward after this year.
I wonder if this is one of those times where everybody thinks that Hunter Renfrow is a sell high because he's had this massive boom week, that he almost becomes a buy, because I think everybody's like, I'm sure you're in, he got put on basically every trade block in leagues that I'm in. And I think that everybody's like, oh, Hunter Renfrow's blown up. Everybody's talking about Hunter Renfrow. I want to sell him. And I think that if you sent a second round pick for Hunter Renfrow now, the Hunter Renfrow GM's probably very happy to take that second round pick because they don't see the upside. But for me, I'm looking at it, I'd happily pay a second round pick for Hunter Renfrow. You know me, I'm a big target guy. I think, it's the reason I was all in on Deontay Johnson. To me, if a guy can get open, he can play with any quarterback. And Hunter Renfrow can get open. He's a fantastic route runner. Yes, he's not a 6'4" Adonis that plays on the outside and looks like DK Metcalf and runs like DK Metcalf. But, at the moment, Hunter Renfrow can get open. DK Metcalf can't. And that, to me, I'm excited about Hunter Renfrow moving forward because I think that he's undervalued. I think he's easily, to me, worth a second. And if you're saying to me that you don't think that's worth a buy, then to me, that means I'm going to go out and make some Hunter Renfrow offers because I'm confident I can get him for a second.
I think if you can get in for a late second, if you're a contender and you need the extra piece, then sure. But I would much rather go and get a Lockett for 2 seconds than Hunter Renfrow for a second. It just depends on your league, and that's a bit of a cop-out answer. But I think if you can get Renfrow for less than a second, I'd happily go for it. I'm just a bit skeptical going forward to see what actually happens in Las Vegas.
So if I was offering you right now, I could offer you Hunter Renfrow plus a third for Tyler Lockett. You'd take Tyler Lockett?
Yeah, I would.
Okay. What if I was to offer you Hunter Renfrow plus Donovan Peoples-Jones?
So you're just picking people off the show sheet, Rich.
No, exactly. I thought let's pick the guys that we've talked about. I'm offering you Hunter Renfrow and Donovan Peoples-Jones for Tyler Lockett. Where would you lean there?
Tyler Lockett still.
Yeah. See, I honestly just to put it in numbers. Tyler Lockett is currently my wide receiver 32 in my ranks. Hunter Renfrow is my wide receiver 37. They are a tier separated in terms of my value chart. So I've got Hunter Renfrow, he's worth 15 points. Tyler Lockett is worth 19. So the difference between them is a 2022 third round pick for me. So if you were offering me Renfrow and a third for Lockett, I would say that is a perfectly even trade. Maybe I'm getting hyped about Renfrow, but
I think you are higher than me on Renfrow. But
I think I'm probably higher than most, to be honest. But I just think that a guy that can get open, a guy that is going to command targets, and we've seen him fed targets, what's not to love?
I think going forward for this season, it's a great buy. But if I'm looking forward to following years, I'm not a huge fan of Renfrow just because of the uncertainty. But then at the same time, I can see your points around Lockett and the uncertainty there with Russ. I'm just skeptical on Renfrow, but I think he's going to be one of those players that is always going to produce weeks, probably not like this, but weeks that will get you 10 to 15 points. And get you those targets, but he's probably not seen in that way by the Dynasty community. I just think that that's what his legacy is going to be, third on Renfrow, basically.
Well, I am now, every league that I'm in the playoffs that I've not, the trade deadline hasn't passed, I'm now going to offer a second round pick for Hunter Renfrow, and I'll let you know how many trades I get done, because to me, I think that's a smash deal.
Okay, while you're doing that then, Rich, I'm going to speak about our last little section. And with this last little section, we didn't put out a listener questions tweet this week. And Rich, I know you're probably thinking that was me just messing up, but it's because I wanted to talk about the Dynasty Listener League. So with the Dynasty Listener League, it was a difficult challenge to create some sort of league that was Dynasty related, but we wanted some sort of turnover. And me and Rich went back and forth for weeks. Intermittently, it wasn't every day for like 3 weeks. Don't worry, we're not that sad. We'll probably talk about other things as well, like other Dynasty things. But we went back and forth, and we finally came up with some sort of format where we could get that turnover, so we can get more of you listeners into this league, but keep it as much of a Dynasty format as possible, considering we talk about Dynasty every week. So for those that don't know, the format is, if you make the playoffs, you stay in the league. If you don't make the playoffs, you're out, and we get new owners in. But the new owners don't take over that specific roster. The roster that is then left, because it was outside of the playoffs, that roster then goes into a pool and gets dispersed completely, and all of those players are then open for the new owners to come in and try and build their team off what has been left over. There's no the trade deadline is, I believe, week 14, Rich, or is it an open one? Because
I think we never agreed on this, to be honest, because I was campaigning to get rid of it. So I think that was one of the many contentious decisions that we never actually made.
But either way, there's not been a whole lot of trading, but there has been some trades. The one thing I wanted to talk about is basically give a congratulations to the top 6 playoff teams. So that would be Jason in the first seed, who has gone 11-2, absolutely smashed it. He's the uncontended 1 seed. There was no maybe not last week. He was just completely out there. You also had Liam clinching a bye, not me. Me and Richard not doing that well. We'll come on to that in a little bit. And then in the 3 seed, we had Phil, who it was his first Dynasty league, which is crazy to me. We had, I think it was 3 or 4 first-year Dynasty players, which this league is not for first-year Dynasty players, in my opinion. I still find it a bit crazy and a bit confusing. You've got Alex at seed 4, Chandler at seed 5, and then I was going to say but I messed up and forgot the rules. So I created a rules book, and the 6th seed was meant to be a wild card spot, which is where outside of the top 5 seeds that was based on record, the 6th seed is based on the highest points scored in the season outside of those top 5. And I completely forgot about that rule, so I was putting out updates saying this is what the playoff picture is going to look like in week 14. And Mark, bless him, thought that he got into it. I thought that he got into the playoffs and his spot was safe. And then when I went back and had a look at the rules book, it did confirm what I suspected, that I'd messed up. So Jonathan did make it into the playoffs. Interestingly, Jonathan was 5-8, but he had the 2nd highest point scored on the season, which is exactly why I put that rule into all of my Dynasty leagues that I opened up this year, because I was fed up of playoffs having a week 6 seed, which I don't think would have happened in this league, but I've definitely seen it in other leagues where someone had a really easy schedule and then put up like 90 points and gave someone basically a first round bye. I was fed up of seeing it in my Dynasty league, so I put in a wild card. So unfortunately, we are saying goodbye to Mark, Stephen, Paul, Richard, and Sam. And you might have noticed by now, listeners, that I haven't mentioned me or Rich. And that's for a very good reason. And we've tried to keep this as low priority as possible, but I cannot keep talking to you without letting you know that me and Rich went 3-11 in this league. We are dead last on both points scored and by record, I believe, Rich. So it was an awful season for us. I don't think our draft was too bad. I just don't think that we caught a break with injuries going through this season. We lost a good couple of players throughout the year.
It was the first draft we'd ever done together, and I think we learnt a lot. I think we both kind of were so busy trying not to offend the other one. I think we ended up conceding to each other a bit too much. But we kind of built the bulk of our roster around Miles Sanders and Saquon Barkley, and that's not exactly been a recipe for success this year, has it?
No, and then T. Higgins, which was your pick, not mine, just pointing that out.
T. Higgins has been fantastic down the stretch.
He has been okay. He's not been what we thought he was, which we drafted him as a Dynasty wide receiver 12, I believe it was. But no, so moving forward, what is going to happen in the league is me and Rich are going to stay, and we've had a vote in the league that we are going to keep our roster, and the other 5 rosters are going to be put into the dispersal draft. So for the rest of the league, we are keeping those listeners that have won spots at the start of the season in the league until the year runs through. And they're going to set lineups, play out the toilet bowl, and probably beat me and Rich because we've been doing awfully. Me and Rich are probably going to come last and win the toilet bowl, if you can even say that. And then we'll be looking for 5 new members to come in and take over those 5 listener spots. Rich, the one thing I haven't mentioned, which is the thing that I think we were both most excited about with this league, is you can actually steal players from the playoffs rosters when you're doing the dispersal draft as the 5 new members. So
exactly. It's an exciting time. I'm very much looking forward to it. I think we're going to, over the next few months, I think maybe we'll get our heads together, Liam. Maybe we can run some competitions to get and decide who the new 5 GMs are going to be. But I think it's an exciting time. It's a fantastic league. The guys that have been in it this year, thank you so much. It's been fantastic and really enjoyed being part of it. And hopefully Liam and I can get our act together and put together somewhat of a slightly more impressive roster next year.
Yeah, come back and actually do okay in the playoffs, get into the playoffs, shall we say? But keep your eyes open, guys, if you are interested. As Rich has said, we'll come back with more updates. But I just wanted to say we'll be coming back with weekly updates to let you guys know who has been doing well in the playoffs and who hasn't been, and see who actually wins this, because there is a prize for the winner in this league, I believe, Rich, because it is a 5-yard rush listener league.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to remind you all, we'll be back next week. Christmas won't have come quite yet. I haven't talked to Liam, but I think I'm intending to do a pod on the 28th. So if Liam's eating too much turkey, I may well be going solo. But we will be getting pods out for you over the next few weeks. Best of luck with all your playoff matchups this week. I hope to hear stories about contending teams that have got through to that crucial semi-final. But have a great week all. Have a great week, Liam, and let's see you again next week.